Love under the scope.
Welcome back to Love Under the Scope. This is a podcast where we get into everything that you need to know about challenges and hardships, overcoming obstacles in a long-term relationship. In this show, we get into topics that I feel are not spoken about enough and could use a little bit more light shed on them because they are areas that we might feel alone. We might feel that we are the only person or the only couple that is experiencing a certain obstacle. And that's just not true. A lot of us humans have shared experiences of not feeling seen, not feeling good enough, wanting to look a certain way and achieve certain things. And so most of what we experience in a long-term relationship, other people can relate to. Other people who have been together for a long time as a couple know that it takes some level of willingness to face the hard stuff and to be able to understand how we can navigate stressful times and times when things just aren't going great. How do we navigate those times as a team together? That's my aim when I talk on this show, is not just to cover topics that are tricky or might bring on shame, or maybe we just don't know what the hell we're doing. My intention is to also explain how to move through those things, at least from my opinion and my experience as a self-love and relationship coach. I am Kelby Lauren, the host of this show, and that's what I do for a living. I love relationships. I love the dynamics that form between a couple. I also love self-reflection and inner work, the work we can do on our own in order to show up in our relationship in a more fulfilling and connected way. Speaking of doing work on yourself, today's topic is about how self-hatred, self-criticism, self-judgment, how all of these things can trickle into our relationship and make things difficult, frustrating, or even impossible to handle. It is Halloween this week, and I thought we would go for a topic that is a little scary, a little dark. Self-hatred is not something that most people want to talk about. It's a feeling that can be hard to face within ourselves. How we speak to ourselves. Do we speak to ourselves in a supportive way, or are we tearing ourselves down all the time with fearful thoughts, judgmental thoughts, and critical thoughts about ourselves? It certainly can be spooky to go in and face the demons that we might carry around our self-esteem and how we carry ourselves in the world. But it is very much worth it to do an internal assessment and figure out what is going on, why are you having these thoughts, and how can we start to balance out inside and not be so negative, so critical, and instead bring in some support from the inside. It really is an inside job when we're talking about creating compassion and support and non-judgment. We start with ourselves, and then it trickles into our relationship. The opposite is also true when we're not working on that stuff. When we are carrying self-hatred, criticism, judgment of self, when we're carrying that around all day, it absolutely can affect our relationship. The way that we think, our thoughts, not only about ourselves, but the world, totally affects our behavior. How we feel about ourselves affects how we treat other people. And we all know this is true. You wake up on a shitty day and you don't want to interact with people. Maybe you are feeling more irritable, easier to anger. It would make sense that that same thing is true with our partner. If I am very tense and carrying around a lot of self-criticism, I'm going to inevitably project that onto my partner. And we don't really want to do that. Projection is an illusion of something that isn't true. It's a vision that we are seeing with our filters that are usually from some level of conditioning in our childhood. And we are basically seeing a lie when we project. We're telling a story of something that isn't true. So it goes without saying that we probably don't want to project onto our partner. It can create animosity, resentment, and a general disconnection between us when we do that. And the stories we tell ourselves can be so convincing. They don't like me. He doesn't care about me because XYZ. And we come up with all of these reasons for why this person doesn't love me, why I'm unlovable, and why I am just hopeless. I'm a hopeless person, broken. A lot of people feel broken when we are in these thought patterns that are so repetitive. We're being told over and over again by ourselves why the world is a certain way, why I am not enough. Pounding yourself with critical thoughts all the time is so exhausting. It is not only exhausting because we are the criticizer, but we are the criticizee. We are taking and spewing criticism at all times. Our energy becomes very depleted. When we are tired, when we are depleted, how does that cause us to act? Frustrated, frazzled, out of sorts, erratic, angry, irritable. We have less energy and therefore less resources to spend on keeping ourselves composed and emotionally regulated, especially in stressful situations. During this episode, I'm going to break down the topic of self-criticism, self-hatred. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to get into what exactly is self-criticism, self-hatred. Where do self-hatred and self-criticism come from? At what point in our lives do we take on these traits? Then we'll get into how self-hatred and criticism can affect your relationship. And finally, we'll wrap up with some tips and pointers on how to move through and address and reflect, eventually transform and shift some of that self-hatred and criticism. And I'm going to share some ways that you can incorporate into your daily life. Some of them take a lot of time. I don't find that any change that's worth doing is fast. A lot of the work that we do internally, it takes not only our effort, but our patience. So allowing things to happen for us. We initiate the change. We have an intention to shift something. And then also, can we sit back and allow things to unfold as well and have that patience and that knowing that things will turn out the way we would like them to? What are self-hatred and criticism? Have you ever had that voice in your head? And it could be telling you at all times of the day what it thinks about what you are doing, what you have said, how you should be spending your time, why that thing you did 10 years ago was so wrong and you're the worst person. And then sometimes there's thoughts about other people. That person is so rude and this person is unacceptable. It's basically that inner judge that is deciding at every moment whether something is good or bad. And if you are like I was for so long, you probably will assume that a lot of things are bad about not only yourself, but the world. Any beliefs we have about ourselves, we are always projecting onto the world in some way. So self-judgment and self-hatred, I would equate to that voice. Of course, it shows up in so many ways for different people. These feelings about ourselves aren't just formed in thought. It can be the way that we behave, the relationships that we have, the way we feel in our body. Do I feel comfortable? Am I in pain a lot of the time? How am I in my actual body? So self-hatred and criticism and judgment will show up in a lot of ways. For me, I would say it is that voice, that part of me. This is a distinct part of us that has a very strong opinion, and it happens to be quite loud. In my case, maybe you can relate. When I say that this is a part of ourself, I'm speaking to the idea that we all contain multitudes. We can be anything and everything. Are made up of all of these different parts. If you've ever heard somebody say, part of me feels this way, but the other part feels that way. And so we oftentimes have these fragmented parts that all have a certain opinion. Part of us wants to be the wild child. The other part wants to be the good girl. One part wants to be an artist and live the free spirited life. And the other part really wants the stability of a job at a corporation. We have many desires. We have many things that we can experience in this world. And so there are parts of us to correspond with that. The inner critic, the inner saboteur, as I have discussed in a previous episode, is a part of us. It's generally a wounded part of us that we created in our childhood. It could be a defense mechanism for us to stay safe, quote unquote. What might appear to be safe, but is actually just never taking a risk. Never doing something that is a little scary, never stepping beyond the limits that we put on ourselves. Yes, the inner critic is a self-imposed limit. It's telling you, you can't do this. You're not capable. You're not smart enough. It's constantly keeping us in our place, quote unquote. The ego wants us to be safe. For the ego, taking a risk, putting myself out there, being fearless, stepping through fear and taking the action that scares me so much. That would be unsafe or risky for the ego. And so it creates this entire part that is desperate to keep us from moving forward, from taking a risk, trying to reach out for connection, reaching out for help. Anything that requires vulnerability on our part, this is where the inner critic and the self-hatred, the self-judgment will come in to say, no, you're not doing that because you aren't blank enough. You haven't earned it. You don't deserve it. All of these false narratives that we have created in our mind, consciously or usually subconsciously. We've done this. We have imposed these limits on ourselves in kind of a crafty way, sort of a creative way for stopping ourselves from going for the dream and going big or going home. It's this voice that is so powerful because it's in our head all the time. It's this repeated thought. It's repeated so much that it's actually been stored into the body, into the actual nervous system. This response of hating self, of limiting self. When we talk about self-hatred, we are talking about something that I believe will a lot of the time manifest into our actual lives. So there'll be some aspect of chaos or something that we really hate going on in our life. It might be something that is actually within the relationship, something that we take the hatred that we have for ourselves and we place it onto that thing that we can blame in the relationship. This takes a lot of courage to go in and actually look and see how you feel about yourself. How do you really feel about yourself? This episode, this topic that we're covering, requires a level of honesty that might feel brutal. For me, the thought of sharing that I have had hateful thoughts toward myself, it feels almost a little scary, a little vulnerable. It's not something that you go out into society and tell everyone. By the way, I hate myself. And it's certainly not something that I would advise taking on as an identity too, right? I hate myself, but I have a part of myself that is very critical and does hate me for whatever reason. She constantly tells me why I'm not enough, why I can't succeed, that I'll never have the things that I want. She is a constant reminder of my deepest fears. And a lot of the deepest fears that I have and have had in my past revolve around relationships. I would say that's probably true for a lot of people listening too. Yeah, we can be afraid that we're going to lose our job, that we're going to fail at opening a business. But the scariest things in our lives usually revolve around relationships. This person might leave me. I might not be lovable. These are very deep core vulnerabilities that I would say almost every human being has, especially those of us in relationships. So that's what self-hatred and criticism and judgment usually is, in my opinion and my experience, is fear. There might be this bullish aspect to the voice in your head. There might be this bullying feeling there, and yet it's masking that deeper level of fear. So that's the cool thing about having these parts too, is that a lot of the time there are actually layers to the parts. Well, there's this one up front that's very angry and, very bossy and critical. And then behind that, there is anger and there is frustration and resentment. And then there's sadness even deeper. And so we can go and excavate the different emotions that have built up as a result of carrying these negative, critical beliefs about ourselves. Where does self-hatred come from? Where does that heavy judgment, shame, criticism stem from in our lives? In my experience, it usually can be linked back to childhood, anywhere from our early infant years up into teenage years and beyond. We might have inner child pieces that are in their 20s, and we can also have experiences that were particularly traumatic beyond our childhood. Maybe you had a very nasty breakup. Maybe you were betrayed in some way. Those experiences can also exacerbate the self-hating, critical thoughts that we might already carry. Typically, when it comes to being programmed to believe these things, it could be that we watched a parent or a guardian believe the same thing about themselves. Once again, the parent believed it about themselves. Anything we do with ourselves, we will project outward onto our partner and also onto our children in some cases. So we could have watched our parent have a belief about themselves and also about us. We could have learned something about ourselves based on our perception of our relationship with my parents. I am not enough. I don't deserve to succeed. I don't deserve attention, whatever. Insert your flavor of belief system. So we form beliefs based on how we are actually treated, the perception of how we are treated as a child. We could also form beliefs based on what society is telling us about love, about relationships, about self-esteem, confidence, how we should be. We should be this way, but not too much, right? So we're getting these messages from society too, and that is telling us how to think about ourselves. Am I good enough or not, based on my peers and some comparison with other people? We form beliefs while we were in school, and we are being brainwashed, is what I would say, in some cases, to believe certain things about the world. A lot of us go to school up until high school, even into college, and then we get into the real world, and it's like, okay, that didn't prepare me for this. These are just some examples of how, when we are children and we are very malleable, these ideas get into our head and we are fed a lot of the time what we are to believe, not only about the world, but about ourselves. Obviously, if we are not modeled positive thoughts, positive self-esteem, loving ourselves, what that means to love ourselves and to be connected to ourselves, if we're not taught that, which a lot of people aren't, it's not a normal thing in this culture, at least in the US, to be connected to yourself and your desires and what you want from life and, what's so lovable about you, what makes you special and unique, and all of these exciting things. Most people are disconnected from that, is what I find, that we are just kind of living up to somebody's expectations and we're living, the way we think we should be. And so there's a lot of fear around fitting into these certain boxes. And a lot of that has to do with the beliefs that we carry about ourselves. Whether you have self-hatred going on or not, it's still very relevant to go in and excavate and be curious about what you believe about yourself. Some of our beliefs are good and they're supportive, and there's no reason to get rid of them. We can hold on to whatever beliefs we want to hold on to, even if they're negative. You can choose to hold on to a belief, but for the most part, when it comes to the way we feel about ourselves, a lot of us have been programmed with negative beliefs of why we are not enough, why we don't deserve something, why we are not lovable. And that absolutely affects how your relationship is. I do believe that the most detrimental beliefs that we have about ourselves are usually formed earlier in childhood, when we are especially taking in information about the world and about ourselves, and we're forming our identity in those years of late elementary school into middle school. All of the beliefs that we collect kind of in that time, and could be even a little earlier, a little later. In my opinion, those are going to be the beliefs that are the most foundational and fundamental, and could be the most difficult to work through, at least the most time consuming, because they require, in my opinion, time to allow them to unfold and unwind. I don't believe in doing this work personally in a way that's jarring, or, get rid of it now and set it all on fire. I believe in more of a natural unwinding, unraveling, and the stability that that can bring. We're still changing. We're still getting to where we want to be. It's just taking us time. It's like the tortoise and the hare. That's the kind of idea here. So we take all of these beliefs from childhood about ourselves, particularly the negative thoughts that we have towards ourselves, the hate, the judgment, the criticism. And over time, we solidify that part of us. It becomes just part of the routine. I wake up, I look in the mirror, I think how ugly I am. Our inner critic gets built in with that routine. Whatever's happening in our brain is part of our routine. How do you feel about yourself in the morning? I know some people that avoid looking in the mirror at themselves. How does your image of yourself play into your routine? How are you talking to yourself throughout the day? It's these very subtle moments where we might catch ourselves in the loop. It's difficult sometimes because these are so programmed into us, these beliefs. It's the literal perception of our world. It's how we see the world, how the world works to us. To actually go in and be aware of the thoughts that are happening, at least to catch just one of them while you're looking in the mirror, that's a big deal. You're essentially breaking the matrix when you bring awareness to what is going on. What are we allowing to go down in our mind as we're moving throughout our day? And by the way, this part of us that we have solidified over time eventually becomes our biggest obstacle. I am my own worst enemy. Have you ever heard that? That's exactly what we're getting at here. You create this part of you that becomes your biggest obstacle. It's not other people that are telling us you're going to fail and you're not enough, you're not lovable, you don't deserve this. It's ourself. Think about it. Do you really have, haters other than yourself? I am my own hater, and I'm my best hater too, because I know exactly what to say. I know the biggest fears that I have, and I can play right into them with this part of me. We create this entity within us, and it can feel like we're actually at battle with this entity that we have created internally. We are fighting ourselves. Like I said earlier, anything we are doing internally, we're going to project externally. So if there's a war within me, I'm going to create a war outside of me. And guess where that war is most likely to happen? With the person I love dearly, with my beloved partner. Of course, I'm going to create a war with him because there's a war in me, and I need to create what's within me outside of me. So we essentially project this image of war onto the relationship. This hatred, this animosity, this criticism that we have aimed at ourselves will absolutely make itself known in the relationship, in our reality. I believe the saying is as within, so without. Something along those lines. Whatever is inside is also going to be outside. If inside of myself, I am paranoid, and I am on edge, I'm hyper vigilant about what I'm doing, what I'm saying, the choices that I'm making, and I'm judging, I'm going to feel that way in the relationship too. Hyper vigilant, judging, constantly at war. War happens in a lot of ways. Yes, there are couples that yell and scream, and it's quite obvious. There are couples who have one partner who likes to go away and self-isolate, shut down. If you've heard of attachment theory, that's the idea here, that we all have ways of dealing with stress and dealing with the conflict. And it's not always going to be an explosion of huge emotion. It could be that we have disconnected, we have stopped talking, we have stopped having intimacy, and we are completely detached from each other. I would argue that that's even more devastating than having fights. At least with fighting, we are communicating in some way, although it might not be the best way. It might not be ideal, but a lot of the time, fights where we are actually verbalizing can sometimes lead to resolution. If we are shut down from each other, that does not allow resolution to happen if we're not even talking, if we're not even looking at each other. And so this internal war can throw us either into the fire where we're yelling and screaming, or it can bring us into this very cold, isolated place where we are existing in different planets. That kind of distance, that kind of loneliness only builds resentment. You don't understand me. You don't even know me. We might feel lost. We don't even know what to do. We don't know what's right, what's wrong, what step to make next, because when we are in the illusion of war, it's very disorienting and it's exhausting. Like I said earlier, we have convinced ourselves that we are under threat. In fact, I was walking at the park the other day and I had this realization that the way I was walking, it was like I was under threat. I was running from somebody. And I asked myself, what would it be like to walk and just know that I am safe? War is not safe. Emotional war does not allow us to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is the fastest way to connection. Well, if I have put up this wall with you because we're in war, I need to hide. I need something to protect me while I am at odds with you. And the saddest thing is your partner becomes the threat. Your partner is a threat to you. And that could be something that you feel very much at a deep level. So this could be a subconscious feeling. It's not that we're consciously going, oh, I hate that person. Sometimes there is animosity buried very deep down, and we don't realize, oh shit, I was harboring that for a long time. When we're talking about emotions, walls that we have built internally are always going to block us from really connecting at an emotional level. The walls are there to protect us because at some point in our life, we felt like we needed that kind of protection, that ironclad, nothing is getting the fuck through here protection. But guess what? That same ironclad protection that keeps you from opening your heart is also keeping your partner from reaching your heart and from understanding you at that emotional level, which, by the way, is the fastest highway to feeling in love, to feeling inspired by your relationship, to feeling seen, to feeling heard, to allowing the relationship to be fueled by your love, by your energy, the energy of your relationship, you guys coming together as a team. All of this goes back to connection in our emotions. That's my opinion, and it's a very informed opinion. I've noticed this in my own relationship of about 7 years now, going on 7 years. Whenever we make the choice to connect emotionally and share how we feel, I always feel 1,000 times better. I can be the type to hold on to my emotions and not make them known. And so whenever there is that opportunity to really share, okay, I'm talking about real feelings, not just I had a good day today and I wrote some emails and I got some shopping done. I'm talking about the real feelings. Like I was scared today because I had a thought about why I might get fired from my job. Like real vulnerable feelings that we don't always want to be seen in because we have been told that it's humiliating to have these thoughts. Again, the self-hatred, that we were taught to have for ourselves about being an emotional human being who needs connection and love. That's what human beings need. We're social. We rely on each other. We're born not to just fend for ourselves. We are born relying on the care and the nurturing of someone, at least one person. That is built into us as humans. So how do we shift our self-hatred into self-acceptance? I will say that there is some level of being patient and allowing things to unfold and watching the needle move slowly for you. Maybe you start out with 95% negative thoughts about yourself, just to put an arbitrary number to it. Most of the time, you are shitting on yourself. You're saying that you don't deserve it, why you're so horrible, blah, blah, blah. And you're able to move that needle over the course of 2, 3, 4, 5, beyond. Okay, this can take many years. But over time, we can keep this awareness of what is changing for me. How do I feel about myself today? Time and experience will always give us a new level of self-esteem, always. And so time is a reliable factor to incorporate into your journey of coming out of negative thinking patterns and switching yourself into a more positive and supportive place. Part of creating change in this life is watching the change unfold, not being given exactly what we want at all times. For example, if you're building a business, do I really want to wake up tomorrow morning and my business has exploded tenfold? Or would it be preferable that tomorrow I have 2 customers and 2 weeks from now I have 10? We have this slower growth. I believe that kind of steady change where we may even be taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That is, in my experience, a normal way that change happens. It's not just I'm getting better and better and better every day with this particular thing. It's that I'm able to have these checkpoints and go, okay, I have made progress. We're not quite fully there yet, but I have made this progress. Are you able to open up your expectations and know that anything could happen? You may have been carrying the belief that life is a certain way, that I can't have what I desire, I can't be successful. What if you changed that up and brought in some room for spontaneity, for surprise of anything could happen in your relationship, in your life, in your work? A lot of us are trained to see the glass half empty. And yes, we could see the glass half full, but what if we just saw a glass? What if we didn't have all of these expectations for what is about to happen if we decide to shift out of some of this negativity and inner criticism? I think that part is important because it allows some level of surprise to come back into the relationship when we can acknowledge that anything is possible and that we don't know anything for sure. When we can admit that we don't understand anything really, that we're just kind of here in this life and taking it one day at a time and seeing what happens, being playful with it rather than grasping to this idea that I need to change and I'm not good enough, and the seriousness with which I'm taking myself versus leaving it up to whatever might happen, knowing that it was exactly what needed to happen. Give yourself some space for possibility to enter the chat, for opportunity to come forward. There's a teacher that I love that says, leave a corner of your mind open to the possibility of something happening. Those are the first 2 ways to face and to approach self-hatred and criticism. Patience, allowing time to happen and allowing the process to happen, allowing things to unfold at their own pace and not trying to force the change to happen. That being said, there are actual real world steps you can take to facilitate your transformation from inner criticism to inner support, inner compassion, self-love. The first step would be becoming aware of what you believe about yourself. This can take some level of skill because this is a type of awareness that we are not taught Typically from childhood, there's nobody teaching us how to sense within and how to drop essentially into the subconscious mind is what it would be called by most people, and going in and extracting the deep beliefs that we can carry about ourselves. Some of them will be more on the surface. And as you start to do this work, even if you're a beginner, you might be able to pull up some of your more surface level beliefs pretty quickly. Or maybe you're able to go deep fast because you look at the patterns in your life and notice what you keep being served up by life on a platter. Life is always serving us an opportunity to work on our shit, on our conditioning. And so if we are able to look at patterns that happen to us in love, in work, in family, we can actually, with time, with patience, and with focused awareness, we can figure out what are the beliefs that are very deeply rooted for me. And that if I address them and if I can find them and put my awareness and my focus on them, then I'm going to be looking at some serious change in my life. How has that belief, that hatred, that criticism of yourself been holding you back? What does it keep you from doing? And so if I can clean that up, if I can shift that and move through it, what changes for me? So much, I would imagine, when it comes to those deep rooted beliefs. There will be beliefs that we carry that we don't want to. We don't want to face those. We don't want to believe that we actually think that thing about men, that we actually don't respect men in some way, or we have this judgment about women. Some of them will be ugly to look at. We didn't choose to take them on a lot of the time. They were programmed into us. We sponged them up. Now we have the opportunity to go in and clean them up. But having the awareness of some of those more ugly, uncomfortable, even shameful beliefs is going to be helpful, but it could be a little uncomfortable. Can we have compassion for why we created that belief? There's usually a pretty obvious reason. Oh, because I experienced this. I was going through this specific situation, or, my parent was like this. So that explains why I carry this shameful or embarrassing belief. When we approach inner work, we want to do so with a curiosity for what comes forward. The same tone, the same approach that we might take if we were talking to a friend, maybe a child, one of our children, or a niece or nephew, with delicate and with understanding. Anything that comes forward when we are going through our beliefs is information that we can use to continue moving forward through the process. Allow yourself to feel feelings as you do this work. We are essentially shedding layers as we go through and clean up our beliefs, and there will be deep-seated emotion attached to the belief sometimes. Sometimes they're easy to pass. Other times they require expression of emotion. I have grief because I believed this about myself my whole life, that I was not capable, that I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. I would never have what I wanted. And so there's grief about that. Wow, for 30 years, I carried that belief about myself, and look at all of the ways that it kept me limited. I want to emphasize that this isn't about beating yourself up for having these beliefs. We're only human, and we all are given beliefs, sometimes passed down by family, and we don't want them. And we have the opportunity to let them go if we so choose. It will sometimes require feeling the feelings, allowing them to be felt. A lot of the time when we're expressing emotion, we're doing so from a surface level rather than if we are to express emotion from the root of the belief. So the difference would be that I cry because I stubbed my toe and I'm so frustrated, versus I'm crying because I got to the root of the belief that was triggered by me stubbing my toe. And the root belief really is that I'm so stupid and clumsy. And I'm releasing from that root. And that actually supports us to shift through the belief when we feel the feelings of it and allow ourselves to go through the wave of emotion that is attached to the belief. It can feel very cathartic to allow yourself to cry or to scream into a pillow from that place. I will always recommend, if you're going to do this work, to anchor into something bigger than you, something bigger than me. When we can bring in some kind of divine entity, or maybe it's Mother Earth for you, maybe it's science, it could be anything at all. Something that is higher than us, that can give you hope in the times where you are feeling your lowest. When we do this work, we go through the emotions, like I just said. How do we better navigate the downtime? If we're going up and down like a wave, how do we navigate those down periods and bring in something that can act like a North Star? You could even use your own goals, your desires for yourself as the North Star. Confidence, power, achievement. I personally prefer a divine power because I do feel like, the compassion is wrapped into that for me. The feeling of I am loved for who I am, and there's nothing that I've done wrong or right. Unconditional love. That, I think, is very important when we feel hopeless, when we are facing some of the deeper stuff that we have experienced, and we want to know that we are not alone. It can be easy to get into this narrow-minded focus of, it's only me. I am suffering and nobody is here with me. I'm the only one experiencing this. That can be very easy when we're deep in the shit. What is going to help you feel faith and hope when you are inevitably in a dark night of the soul? We all go through that at some time or another. A lot of the time it is because of relationships. When in doubt, you can always work with a coach or a therapist. I do this all the time with my clients, help them to understand and navigate their thought patterns, their belief systems that are keeping them from getting connected to themselves, getting connected with their partner. These things we believe about the world and our relationship, that it needs to be this way, that it's not good enough, that we're not doing enough. All these fears that we have for ourself, for our experience, for our lives, that get wrapped up and can really make a mess in our relationship. It is totally worth going in and separating what is driving this relationship. Is it my fear? Has it become that we are both allowing ourselves to be led by fear as we move through this relationship? Can we instead start to self-reflect and do that inner work that is needed for us to come together and act as a team? When in doubt, you can reach out to me if you need any support on this subject. I work with couples, I work with individuals. I would love to help you navigate self-hatred. Oof, it's a heavy one. And it can be really nice to have the guidance and the support of somebody who is a trained professional in helping people with the obstacle of themselves, of the war that is within them. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you are experiencing any of the negative thoughts and belief systems that I mentioned throughout this episode, I hope that this has been supportive to you and in your journey. Keep going. That's all that really matters, is that we keep going and keep plugging away little by little. That's how change happens. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to find me on social media, I am at Coached by Kelby on Instagram and TikTok. I can also be reached via email. If you have an idea for an episode, if you have a question that you would like for me to answer anonymously, you can email me at coachedbykelby@gmail.com. I would totally appreciate a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. If you're watching there, please do subscribe and give this video a like. Thank you again, and I'll see you guys next Friday.